So, welcome to Self-Care on Board. My name is Geraldine Hardy, and today we have a special guest, Octavian.
My pleasure, thank you.
Welcome. So, Octavian, can you please give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so I'm from an aristocratic family in Austria. We go back about 1,000 years. And I had particular experiences with the family where we had a business crisis, which I ended up managing at the age of 25. And in the whole process, the family imploded a little bit. We had a lot of discussions and fighting with each other. And this is what kind of led me to think about in family dynamics, family governance, what did we do good, what didn't we do so good, and why. And that again led to me to founding the Antifragile family, where I now try and help families do a better job than we did.
Okay, thank you. So, Octavian, what is your full name? You are actually, we call us an English Duke, or
Yeah, I think, well, my grandmother was a duchess, if we put it in English terms. But my grandfather married her was a count, so I'm a count.
You're a count?
Yes.
Okay. So we actually have a count sitting next to us. So your full name is Octavian?
So my full name actually is Octavian Sigismund Maria Gotthard, Graf Pilati from Thassul to Daxberg.
Wow, okay. So this is Austria?
German.
German.
Yeah, if I were Austrian, I wouldn't have the titles anymore.
Okay. So your background is very specific, which we've never had on this show. And to just come back, your background is quite interesting to understand how you came to create antifragility. This is pretty much your companies, your methods.
Yes.
And can you give us an idea, like getting more details on like how did you get there and what was your personal journey?
Yeah. So the antifragility part is actually, I read the book Antifragility by Nassim Taleb. Yeah. I remember I was lying, it was in the summer, I was at our castle where I was lying in the sunbed reading the book, and I was like, this is actually what I'm trying to do. Yeah. So that's why I'm using the term. And how I got there is just out of my own experience, which wasn't very pleasant. And our family has I realized that we were a fragile family, which...
What's defines fragile?
Fragile is just something that breaks very easily.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have you have fragile, yes, which is something that breaks very easily. Then you have things that are resilient, which means they can withstand something that happens, but they kind of like come back to the same they were before. And antifragility means that when pressure is applied, afterwards, the system, the family is stronger than before.
It's one core unit.
Yes, it's one being a core unit as a family is one important factor for anti-fragility.
Now, everyone who hears that you're a count, they must think like, wait a minute, you grew up in a castle?
Well, next to it, but yes.
Yes, and you also went through boarding school and everything. So you actually experienced a certain lifestyle that many people would aspire to.
That's
correct. That's like a fairy tale lifestyle.
Yeah.
But can you enlighten us what actually the reality was?
Well, first of all, I was mainly brought up by my nanny. My parents were busy tending after the castle, the estates, the family wealth. So that is something when you say fairy tale that you kind of don't develop the same relationship with your parents that in a middle-class family you normally would. So it's like, I always like to say, the currency of love is time.
Yes.
And in wealthy families, there is less of that between the growing up generation and the parents. And in bad examples, the time is replaced with money.
And did you feel that?
Not so much, because my parents didn't try to make up the missed time by giving me expensive things. That did not happen.
Yeah.
So, but I've seen it in other families where people try to compensate. Okay, I'm not there for your birthday party, but I just bought you this really expensive watch. Okay. So that wasn't so much the case.
So how did it feel like? How did you grow up? Like as a teenager and also as a small child?
Yeah, well, so from the age of about 3 months to, how old was I when I went to boarding school? 11. I was looked after by my nanny and her husband and her kids. And then at age 11, I went to boarding school for 3 years in Austria and then for 5 years to the UK.
Okay.
So at age 13, I came to the UK. And so as the son of the local count, you're kind of, I don't like the words, but I will use it anyway. You're kind of like a local celebrity, child celebrity. So you go along to all the events, there's all these events, local events that the family represents at, because you sponsor all sorts of clubs and the firefighters are walking in there, and then you're there and everyone knows you, you don't know them. It's a bit weird. And in very weird experience, so in German language, you have a formal way of speaking to people and an informal. And with children, you always use the informal. But particularly older people in the village or the other villages, they use the formal speaking to me. So when you're like 3 years old, 4 years old, and people use the formal way of speaking to you, it's a bit confusing. We're like, why?
Yes.
So, and they don't call you Octavian, they call you Mr. Count.
Mr. Count.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel in your teenage times and until you grew up?
Well, my teenage times were actually great. So, well, a lot of people would, so when you have boarding school, there is two kinds of people after boarding school. When I look at my friends from boarding school, you have some of them who hated boarding school. Then you have some of us, which is me, who loved boarding school. And I'm speaking about the boarding school in the UK and Austria. I didn't have a good time because I was different to all the others and I was singled out for it. And for me, boarding school in UK was actually great. I was not in the limelight anymore. And I was just one of the other kids, even though it was an elite boarding school, don't get that wrong, there's a bunch of, but in that bubble, I was just like anybody else. That was a positive experience for me. It helped me a lot of forming my own identity as such.
So I think you went to school, university, but something within your family business or happened also where you had to step in, didn't you? And you had to change your plans on what you actually wanted to do.
Yeah, my original plan was, I was studying mechanical engineering. Yeah. And I had a career plan like you do, and they never work out anyway. But the plan was study mechanical engineering, do my master's, then get a job, do an MBA, and do a doctor at some point. So in reality, I paused my studies to support my dad in the crisis that we had, and then taking over in the process. And
what crisis?
So my dad did an investment. Yes. But he leveraged our estates to do the investment, and the company invested in went bankrupt. No one got convicted, but the books were cooked. The company was overvalued by about factor 7 to what it was really worth.
Oh, wow.
And then that triggered the banks to say, okay, we want our money back. And so I tried to restructure our estates, which is a forestry company, and then we had to sell. So we sold the estate, which is the forest land, with our palace. I still have the castle.
Okay. So you're actually, how old were you?
25. So when it started, I was 24. Yeah. And then when I took the reins, I wasn't the CEO, I was more like a crisis manager. So my dad was still the one who made the final decision, but I did all the legwork.
Was that assumed that he needed to do that? Because I do believe that you have siblings. Was it just assumed you will be the one who was doing it? Or
no, it was actually more, it happened by chance. So I have an older half-brother who had his own company, so he couldn't, do it like I did. And initially, I only supported my dad by, going along as a translator, because all the meetings were in English and my dad doesn't speak English.
Okay.
Or did speak English. And what basically happened, when the crisis hit off, I got a job.
Yes.
I was like, okay, I have a flat that I own, that I need to pay my bills. Other than that, if this whole thing was pear-shaped, I need to make money. So I got a job, and once a month we would have a meeting at the headquarters in Munich. And after the meeting, we would always go to the beer garden, as you do.
Yeah.
And I remember our lawyer called me in the beer garden, and I was like, why is our lawyer calling me? I have like, doesn't call me them for the
Yeah.
And I pick up the phone and like, hello. And he's like, have you read the email? No, what email? Like, read your emails, call me again. Back then you didn't have roaming, so I had to find a Wi-Fi spot in the beer garden, read my emails. And my dad and my brother went on holiday, and my dad sent an email to everybody saying they're going to be gone for 2 weeks, not reachable. And I will be taking care of things in the meantime, and a phone number. And so that's how I kind of like got into it. And after the 2 weeks, our lawyer wanted a meeting with my dad, and he suggested that I should take over the crisis management. And in that meeting, my dad said, okay, if that's what you're suggesting, that's what we're going to be doing. I was like, okay. So that's...
How did you feel about it?
I was actually, honestly, back in the day, I was very excited.
Good.
Yeah. I didn't know what I was getting into. But
so this actually, listening to your story, and was definitely a major milestone for you to create antifragility.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't say that at the time I was antifragile as a person. So came with a lot of health issues down the road.
Would you like to share?
I can. So I have Mast Cell Activation Syndrome and POTS, which do you call it in English? Postural tachycardia syndrome, I think is, if I translate it correctly. And that kind of like developed that. Well, it started before taking over, because we already had inheritance discussions internally and so on. And I lived in a flat that had a mold issue, which we didn't know. Yeah. So that got compounded. Yeah. And I have ADHD and autism. It also wasn't very helpful.
Okay, so how do you this this show
is about well-being.
Exactly. Yeah. Or self-care. So how do you go about it? Because you definitely had a very stressful situation to be able to do the crisis management, which is not everyone can do this and has the resilience. And how did you manage to do this and also take care of yourself? And how do you manage?
Okay, well, first of all, back then I didn't take care of myself.
Okay, what does that mean? You did not.
I slept very little. I was working 80 hours a week because I had my job. I was writing my master thesis and I did the crisis management. Yes. So I did that for about 6 months. And then after 6 months, I stopped my master thesis and I quit my job to focus fully on the crisis management. Yeah. Because I said, okay, I can't go on. Probably should have, it was like, I was like with one ass cheek on one chair and one ass cheek on the other, because I was like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I still need my job. So I should, keep it flowing. Yeah. So yeah, I tried things like going for a run in the morning, which was silly. I should have probably just slept an hour more instead. But at age 25, you're young, you have energy, you can compensate a lot for quite a long time till your body tells you, sorry.
When did it start to tell you?
Well, I lost my decision-making capability. I just realized I was so stressed, so tired, I couldn't.
You lost your decision-making capabilities. That's certainly important. Yeah. So literally your physical and your mentally and emotional well-being was really not supporting the way how you had to function in your job.
No, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think no one in my family really understood self-care either back then. And so it was, and you had the, internal pressure to manage and the external. So as I said, going back to the whole concept of we were not a resilient or anti-fragile family, we were fragile. So pressure came up onto us. Instead of being a unit working together, we had infighting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that made it tougher.
So where are you at now? So this is like how many years ago? This is like over 12 years ago, because you're now 37? Or
37, yes. Yeah. So I took over in 25, so 11 years.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
So what happened in these 11 years in between?
Well, we had the sale with the whole thing kind of was concluded in 2018.
Yeah.
With the sale of the forest land. The sale of the palace was done, concluded in 2022, because without the forest land, without the regular income, you can't upkeep palace and the castle. Right?
Yeah.
Couldn't do both. And my dad passed away 2 years ago. So we're still going through inheritance proceedings because it's a complicated estate. It's taken some time. Yeah. And we'll see how. So after finishing the crisis, we had a partial handover. So I told my dad I want my inheritance now. I did all the work to save this. That's what I said. And I would like my part of inheritance to be passed on now. And that's what we done. After a bit of going forth and back at different opinions on the matter, we came to an agreement, and that's what we concluded.
That's something really important, because that's pretty much a generational wealth being transferred now.
Yeah. So our wealth was built over. I mean, in my family, we used, apart from one instance, 4 or 5 generations ago, no, 5, 6 generations ago, the oldest son would always get the inheritance.
That was typical.
Yeah, typical aristocratic thing. So the oldest son was trained from early age on to inherit the estates and the political functions, because we were kind of like we were the government, basically, part of the government. And the second oldest son would be trained to join the military from the beginning on. Mm. And the third oldest son, if there was one, was trained to join the church.
What about the women?
They were married off strategically.
Yeah, that's the timing.
That was how it was.
Yeah.
And so what happened is my great-grandfather had 4 daughters.
Yes.
Both sons died as children.
Yes.
And all of them married soldiers. So we didn't have anyone in the family after World War II with knowledge of how to run estates.
Wow. Okay.
And that's when also with some legal changes in Austria, like minimum shares in inheritance, minimum shares and so on, the family decided we're not going to keep it together anymore, but we're cutting it up. Yeah. So since my great-grandmother's generation, we have always divided the estate. So it's not one big family office anymore like it used to be.
You yourself, you invest?
Yes.
Is there anything specific that you invest in, or something that you feel like is your main interest?
Well, I've done a lot of real estate because I was told I should be doing it, but actually I hate it. So I'm more of divesting there. That was like managed to get some skills and experience, but not my thing. So mostly the focus is on public liquid investments, venture capital investments, cryptocurrency.
Okay, so you're like really the new generation.
Yeah, and we have forest land still in other jurisdictions.
Yes. So antifragility, tell me something. What is it you do when you work with families?
So we start off with auditing the family. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like a standardized thing I do. I've got process. When I work with family, we look at the family system. Mm-hmm. We look at all the different types of family capital. And then I give them a rating in each capital. I say, okay, you're green, yellow, red. And that's the first thing. And then after the audit, we sit together and say, okay, this is what I think you need to work on. This is where you don't need to work on anything. Do you want to continue working with me? And if yes, what shall we do? And then I can give a quote for the next.
So the fragility is mainly in pretty much how they run their own family business?
So there's the family business is one part. I work on the family itself. Okay, so how do they run the family?
Meaning you don't just look at the assets or...
That's one part. I look at the assets.
Also, yeah.
But that's one of 5 parts.
What are the other?
The other parts also, I look at the cultural capital in the family, which is like the family culture.
Yeah.
Values, purpose, whatever you have there. Behaviors. Then we look at human capital, which is more like health and well-being. How healthy is the family? Because if the family is unhealthy, they are not going to do very well in stressful times.
No, they won't.
Then there is the social capital, where you have internal and external.
Yeah.
Internal social capital is the quality of relationships that family members have with each other.
Yeah.
And the external is with people outside the family. And the last one is intellectual capital. So what do people actually know in the family? How well trained are they? How much experience do they have? Which skills do they have? And where are blind spots that the family needs to engage outside advice, and where do they have their own knowledge internally?
So the families that you work with can be also just like a startup founder who has generated in his first generation was, Jimmy Rich, rich, or whatever you want to call it.
Current client, for example, that I have falls into that. They're planning to set up a family office. They want to get the next generation engaged and working with me to see how can we do this.
So why do you think people need antifragility? Just give me like a few reasons that are like, okay, this is non-negotiable.
Well, first of all, it's just better and healthier. Yeah, no-brainer. Secondly, my thesis behind of this is that the way society has developed, and society goes like a bit through cycles, we have arrived at a time where society as a whole is kind of fragile. And one of the reasons why is because families have been hollowed out as a concept. And I'm not now meaning that, the standard way a family has to be, but people are dispersed, people are more busy quarreling around how to distribute assets between each other. And the family is the smallest and most important unit in a society, and they have been weakened and become fragile. And I think by making families more anti-fragile, families can do a better job for society.
Absolutely. So, this world is run by the most powerful families. That's
yes. They employ the most people. Family businesses have the biggest share of GDP. In some countries, it's like 80% of GDP is produced by family businesses.
80% of GDP. Wow. Yeah. And then looking at it, do you think that our society has deliberately untangled families and tried to destroy the whole concept of families?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, families that are strong together are not as easy to control.
Exactly.
So it's an old system. Napoleon started it by changing legislations to weaken families because he needed people to, when families are strong together, they're not inclined to send their kids to go to war. But if people don't like each other, it's easier to conscript.
Absolutely. And that's something very relevant that we see every single day these days. Okay, so if people want to work with you, how can they get in touch with you? You also have a Substack.
Yes, I have a Substack, and I don't know where you put it. There's going to be like a code and a link that you can get a trial to my paid tier. I have a free tier, pay, and 2 different paid tiers. So you can come on my Substack, you can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah. If you Google my name, you find my webpage. Yeah. Pretty simple, pretty easy to find online.
Perfect. And then just coming back to, the conditions that you have, like ADHD.
Yeah.
Something very prevalent, neurodivergent. Give me the causative aspects of that.
Oh, there's a lot. So it's a bit different because I have ADHD and autism.
Yes.
And I was diagnosed at age 35, so I didn't know when I was growing up.
Did that make a difference in the diagnosis?
Yes, made a huge difference. It explained a lot of things. It took away a lot of pressure because I pressured myself a lot for not being able to do things that seemed to be normal and that you should be doing easily. And for me, it was very difficult. Yeah. And now, since I don't pressure myself, I'm actually better at them. I'm not good still, but I'm better than before.
Okay. Can you give us an idea? Networking.
I hate networking in the standard. Put me in a big room with lots of people I do not know. I'm not a happy person.
By the way, we met at the family office conference, I think 3 or 4 years ago, Preston Partners, So how does it make you feel to be in this room of people?
I'm a bit anxious, I never really know. If I don't know the person, I don't know how should I speak to them, etc. So I've got my strategies. I like to go to conferences when there is someone else that I know who then introduces people to me. So that is my way of networking, is to focus on a few people that know a lot of people and build a relationship I'm comfortable, and that they will introduce people to me when I need someone or when it makes sense. I despise small talk. I can't do small talk.
You can't do small.
No, I can't. I chase people away by going too deep too quickly. Or I get insanely bored when talk to me about the weather and I'm like, some more.
I know how to, yes, I get that.
Yeah. And the thing with ADHD, you actually, people with ADHD are better in crisis management,
Yes.
problem solving. With autism, you can intensely focus on things. What can be a good thing is that I have a few deep interests and things that don't interest me
At all.
at all. I can't. Like if someone, I had to learn to listen to things that don't interest me. Very difficult for me.
Is it necessary? I mean, from an authenticity part, do we need to really play that game?
Well, I think it is when I look at it from my perspective, when I want to build a connection with another person,
Yeah.
I will share with them the things that I'm interested in and tell them in a very excited way, like a little child, all the things I know about it.
Yeah.
And if they want to do the same to me, but it's a topic that I'm not interested in, it's kind of, it's respectful to indulge them.
Yes.
And
Appreciation.
and show the appreciation, even though it's not interesting from me. But this is one of the things where you need to just learn how to go about having it. Not, I heard the other day, so it's not a lot of people, a lot of neurodivergence masked, which is healthy. It's very stressful.
Yes.
So what you should do instead is called bridging.
Bridging.
Yeah, which is, for example, eye contact is difficult for me.
Yes.
So a masking trick that you would do is I would stare on your forehead.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's weird for the other person because the other person notices that you're not looking them in the eye, you're just staring on their forehead. They're like, oh, weirdo. So don't bother with the eye contact if it's difficult, but do other things that signal that you're engaged and listening that you can do and do them instead. And so that's what the bridging means. You like compensate with the things that you're good at rather than forcing yourself into something.
There's a high number of ADHD. I mean, I actually, when you say that to me, I actually don't look at yourself in the eyes the whole time because I have to sing.
Yeah.
So, and I cannot deal with small talk. And I'm happy to be in a cave. Don't like to go into crowds of people. But then we get conditioned to do so, and especially when you have been in the limelight as a child.
Yeah, that was not so fun for me.
Yes. Did you escape alcohol, anything else?
Yeah, alcohol.
Yeah. But we stopped drinking.
I stopped drinking. So for health reasons, I didn't drink at all for 5 years. Then I started again, but not in a big way, just because I enjoyed a good drink, like
For the taste.
good for the taste.
Yeah.
But I'm currently not drinking again just because I feel really shit the next day. One glass of red wine is enough for me to feel it the next day because my body is not used to it. Yeah. And that's probably also because of the ADHD. You feel things stronger in both directions, which is good and bad. And the really interesting part of that, maybe for your listeners, is it's not being researched a lot, but latest research into neurodivergency and entrepreneurs is really interesting. They have looked at borderline, narcissism, ADHD. It's 10 times more likely in entrepreneurs than in the wider population. 70% of entrepreneurs are depressed, which is, when you grow up with ADHD and autism, you often are traumatized because you get it's an estimate, but it's estimated that when you're neurodivergent, you receive 20,000 more negative feedbacks growing up than a neurotypical person, which is a problem for how you feel self-worth. And the newest research suggests that neurodivergent traits are genetic. So the genetics decide if you have ADHD, autism, or whatever, and how you grow up decides how severe it is.
Absolutely.
So that's the connection there. It's not like there's one gene for ADHD and one for autism. There's like collection of genes, and depending which ones you have, you then fall into categories that we have defined. Autism and ADHD are just categories that humans have made up. It's not a reflection.
Yes.
And so what's the point I want to go out at is that it's very likely that in wealthy families, the likelihood of neurodivergence, be it autism, narcissism, borderline, ADHD, is very high.
Prevalent.
Very prevalent. So it's like 30% of entrepreneurs have ADHD. So it's inherited. So most likely 30% of wealthy heirs have ADHD. And then you have, autism hasn't been looked at in the study, but if you add up all the other ones, 10% borderline, normally that's 1% of your population, then you have 10% narcissism. There's an overlap, but if you add up the numbers, it's easily 50 to 60% of the wealthy population are neurodivergent.
So what would you recommend now if, for instance, the family finds out that your child has ADHD or neurodivergent autism? I mean, like you said, it depends really how this child is going to grow up. And then also, like nutrition, self-care, everything is important when it comes to that.
Yeah. So first of all, don't worry. It's not a death sentence. Like, it is a brain type. Yeah. So it's not they're not sick. They think differently. And this is for the not severe. So you have like really severe cases of autism where people cannot speak, they're nonverbal, or they're severely impacted. Those really struggle and they need support, and you need to set it up. But for the one, there's a lot of people who are in the milder spectrums, like myself. I'm in the milder spectrum. And particularly how the world is developing, people with ADHD and autism are probably going to do better because like with AI taking over, mundane and routine tasks are being taken away, and you need more specialized knowledge. You need people who are able to tinker, who can problem solve, and that's these people.
Yeah,
it's a resource for the future. The psychologist who diagnosed me said her opinion is that it's actually an evolutionary step.
Funny enough that you say that. It is, because there are more and more children, more and more people who actually come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, but I think that a big thing there is that the whole psycho evaluation has developed. I don't think we now have more ADHD people and more autism people than we used to have.
It has not been developed.
It just hasn't been the diagnosed in the past.
Awesome diagnosed, yeah.
And autism has many different phases. I am the classic autist, which how autism has been defined. I'm from a wealthy family, I'm white, I'm a man.
Okay, really?
Yeah. Because if you look 70, 80, 100 years ago, normal families didn't have the money to engage a psychologist, only wealthy families did. And the typical autist was the heir who was not behaving like he should. The weirdo. Yeah.
Food, nutrition.
Yeah.
To come back to that. Because after you have been diagnosed, you most likely also take care of that. You look at it.
Yeah. Also because of the Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, which, by the way, has a very high comorbidity with autism and ADHD.
Yeah.
So, and POTS as well, because in modern society, we are more stressed by what we experience. If you live in a big city, there's lots of noise, lots of things happening.
Sensory
overload. It's not a village anymore where there's nothing happening. I'm very happy in the cabin in the woods. But then I get bored. That's the ADHD again. The autist in me loves it. And after a while, I'm like, it's a bit boring.
Yes.
So that's, nutrition. I can go out and eat a lot. No. I keep that for when I travel. And even then, I try and always get something where I have a kitchen. So I can try and make my food as often as the travel permits.
Yes. Okay. Is there anything you would like to add to antifragility or any message? Any
message? Oh, a lot I could add, but if I try and have one last message, the listeners are people who have yachts, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So also industry professionals who grew up on the yacht, so work with the families.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, a yacht is a very small space. You can't really escape. So when you have a fight, you can't just get in your car and drive away and say, "I'll come in a week again." You're stuck on this boat.
Yes.
In the middle of the sea. So I think it's actually very important to kind of like work on the relationships that you have with the family and with your staff.
Yes.
I don't know. I've met someone who used to be a cook on yachts, and she said that with some clients it was nice and with some others it's terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can definitely have. There are these experiences.
Yes.
Okay.
So work on yourself and your family. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
No.
Work on yourself and absolutely. Well, thank you for being here today. So Octavian is also one of the board of members of your board member of Family Campus.
Yes.
And that is the initiative, the nonprofit initiative that actually helps also business families, enterprise families worldwide with a certain different way of consultancy approach.
Oh, we educate people around pet
Yes.
governance.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we will see each other next week. And we will also have another interview with Octavian and Dominic von Island from Family Advocates. See you.
If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.